Welcome to the Debt to Financial Freedom podcast.
So what about when people do have a mortgage and they obviously are paying a rate of interest, and that interest is not tax deductible because it's their principal place. It's not a rental. Don't you encourage them to actually pay that off as fast as possible, or use their cash to pay that off so they're not paying all this additional interest and they can free up the cash flow and free up the equity? Or do you still say put it in high income earnings and IRAs and pay it off over 25 years? What's the kind of, curious.
Yeah, it really depends on kind of their goals. We practice debt-free, so we're never going to say, no, don't pay off your mortgage. But it's not a conversation that we have some people who have mortgage rates that are like 2-3%. I'm not going to push them to pay off their mortgage unless there's some other sort of reason that maybe they need to pay their mortgage off because they want to retire. They're like, okay, I'm looking to retire here. I'm looking to cut back on work quickly, and we want to pay it off. And so you don't have to worry about that bill. It's really figuring out like what that cash flow is. If it makes more sense for them, we always encourage people to go into retirement mortgage-free, completely debt-free. But it's not a conversation I'm going to have with somebody that's in their 30s and say, well, you need to pay your mortgage off really fast. Unless they have some sort of life goal that says, yep, let's pay that off, because that frees up a ton of wiggle room for you. So when you do decide to cut back on work here in the next 5 to 10 years, you're not having to worry about paying that mortgage payment too. If it's anything higher than 5%, we really say, hey, let's pay that off a little bit sooner rather than later for those mortgages. But it really is mortgage dependent. That's kind of the one where we're not like, oh my goodness, let's get that gone tomorrow. I recently saw somebody with a almost 8% mortgage. It was like 7 point something. That was like, let's pay that off sooner rather than later. So it just,
why is there
varies.
such a disparity? So you said 2 and 3, and then 7 and 8. Is this because of like prime credit, subprime, fixed versus floating?
It really is time when they got their mortgage. So some of these clients who have that 2-3%, and they got it in like 2019, 2020, when COVID was happening and all of these things, interest rates were really low, and then interest rates skyrocketed. And now like the 7% one, I want to say that they just received or just got that mortgage a year ago, maybe year and a half ago. I can't remember the exact timeline, but it was quite recently. So the rates were much higher. In the United States, at least. I don't know what the impacts were in Australia, but in the United States, during COVID, interest rates really got incredibly low for the longest time. And they were pretty low for a year or two. And then they quickly skyrocketed and just went whoop, like real high. High for these times, people will say, well, it wasn't as high as the 80s. Yeah, that's true. But we're not talking about the 80s. We're talking about within the past 10 years, they got real high. And it's just such a timing thing here, and like everything that's been happening. They are coming down now a little bit lower, but they're still not what they were in 2020 timeframe, 2021, when their interest rates were substantially lower. So it's just when they got their mortgage.
I mean, we're coming to 2025. Do they still have a 2 or 3 year fixed rate because they opted in for a fixed rate for a long period of time? Is that why?